Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cookesville, USA, the wildest, wickedest, wealthiest big small town in the West. Video and audio podcast. We have Sarah Burns, and I should say, Sarah, that obviously we know you as Sarah Burns, but your writer, your pen name, I should say, right, is S.C. Burns.
Exactly.
Yes. And is there a reason that you went with S.C. Burns? Or is that a secret?
No, it's not. It's a trick I've learned from my foremothers. Like P.D. James and
Okay.
J.K. Rowling's and
Yeah.
people like that who chose to have a non-gender pseudonym.
Oh.
Sometimes it pulls somebody in that has no idea what gender you are. So I just decided that sounds maybe a little bit more modern way of introducing myself and collecting my works. So I want to be just an author.
Okay.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And of course, Cookesville, USA, right now is the seminal work of my career, but my career is ongoing, and I've got another hot one that will be coming out soon. But for now, I have to say that everything that I have been interested in and motivated by and found as my passion and my escape from childhood onward has led to that book. Because I grew up reading biographies before I ever got turned on to any other kind of reading, and they were written at a level that a fifth grader would love. So I learned about Abraham Lincoln. I learned about the mountain men like Jim Bridger. I learned about other figures in Western history as well as Jim Bridger, and U.S. history through those geared toward 10, 11, 12-year-old biography books, and they were exciting. And I realized then that history and stories and reading could be a fun escape from the real world, because it was just entering someone else's real world. And I was very intrigued as a kid by Western. Now, Westerns on TV, of course, at the time, they were much fancier than the real West was. They were all cleaned up and dandified, and it was just great watching Bonanza and Maverick and Wyatt Earp and all of those men. Pat Masterson, they had a lot of personality and flair, and of course, a young girl in the 60s would just love to see that. But then I began to read the real stories as someone who became passionate about history and realized how the West was won in the old late 20th century paperbacks, even Louis Lamour, even Hollywood on the big screen. It wasn't the real inside dirt. And when you look at the inside story, they really are much more dramatic and much more diversified than we grew up envisioning. So there was my passion for the screen image, and then there was my reading the reality. And I had a hard time for a while in the 80s and 90s seeing the real West. And then I realized it is more dramatic and more comedic and more horrifying, all of the above, making for very intriguing stories. So that's kind of the background from youth to Cookesville.
Listening to the book, I keep wanting to go back and forth from reading to listening. The first chapter reminded me a lot of the Sergio Leone movies, the spaghetti westerns.
Spaghetti westerns.
Very much. But then also particularly Tombstone, which is probably my favorite Western of all time. Other than the good, the bad, and the ugly, but spaghetti westerns, that's a whole other thing. But that's what I got from it, was that genre and that particular movie.
Right. Yeah, Tombstone was fascinating. I've watched it over and over again. I love the cast, I love the story and the backstories. Doc Holliday. Boy, you can't beat him.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that was Val Kilmer's best role, I think.
I think
It's
so.
I
Yes.
didn't know what I'll be your Huckleberry meant till a couple years ago. And then when I learned what the word meant, it made the line even cooler to me.
Okay, now
Now,
you have to define that for me,
Oh,
please.
it means I'll be your pallbearer.
wow.
Oh, I'll be your Huckleberry? Is that
Yeah,
what you
because the
said?
pallbearers used to have huckleberries onto their pants. So it's I'll be your pallbearer is what he's telling him.
Okay, very good.
So then that begs the question, was Huckleberry Hound a pallbearer? Now, now I realize people go, Huckleberry who? Huck- And that
Oh,
was 70s and 80s, right? Huckleberry Hound.
yeah.
Right. He was
Yeah.
a pallbearer anyway. He had a paw.
But
Sorry.
really, this
Sorry.
to me is, I love the way the book is structured because we get this cool Western movie first, is the way I see
Hmm.
it, that pulls people in, then kind of a detective movie,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then like a reflection movie near the end. But today we're talking about really the exciting. I mean, the whole book is good and exciting, but we start off right away with a boom. We're into this awesome period, and you feel the period as you're listening to it.
You know, one thing I have found, and I do travel a lot, and I've done not only to European countries and South America, but I love touring the South and the West. And as we came from Kentucky to Orange County twice, when I was 8 and then when I was 12, before we moved out to California, well, I had that experience of seeing the real West for the first time. You know, waking up in a Texas town and saying, "Where are the horses? Wait a minute, where are the cowboys?" I really expected to see them.
Wow.
And then stopping at the Indian trading posts and buying turquoise and silver jewelry for my friends back in Kentucky. And then going to Tijuana and buying a little leather vest to show them I've been to Mexico. You know, all
Yeah.
of those things were just so exciting. But
Yes.
to scratch and dig into it a little further as an undergraduate student and then as a graduate student, uh, the picture of saying, "Remember the Alamo," didn't become so justified, and
Hmm. Hmm.
the stories of Native Americans, of course, gave me heartache. So, and yet there's always stories of victory, and that's what I found. That's what you've got to bring out. So when I thought about this first book and establishing a real town based on a fictional town based on a real town, I wanted it to be very authentic for 1846 to 1850. And there's no better place to start that story than in Santa Fe. I mean, Santa Fe has a history and a charm and a lure to it that other southwestern towns don't have. I've been there a few times,
Hmm.
and I just love the kivas. I love the food. I love the color, the landscape. You know, it's so enchanting at night as the sun goes down. And New Mexico is very unique. And then studying women's history and learning about Latules, I knew that I had to bring her in because
Mm.
I had never heard of her until I'm doing my graduate work and delving deeply into Native American societies, Hispanic societies, and then she's a blend of all of it in Santa Fe. And she's such a remarkable story as an exceptional woman that wasn't born into wealth. You know,
Mm.
in the middle to modern era, the only women we heard about for centuries and decades were the exceptional women. You're
Right.
born to become a monarch. You're born to be a princess. You have a title, and someone wants to marry you for that title. You didn't get to earn it all on your own. And she was a scrapping and amazing female in an
Yeah.
era and a place that demanded diversity and was prone to female leadership because it will bring about the peace you need in a war torn region. And all around her, there was imminent warfare on the verge of the Mexican War, but they could all live peaceably and talk peaceably and party in her casino bar,
saloon, right?
bordello.
Yeah,
But it's the whole package. She had the whole package.
Yeah.
And she kind of ruled Santa Fe, giving money, making lots of money, giving money to the church, giving supporting people in need. She was kind of like the native Hispanic mammy of the area, if you were going to stereotype somebody, because she brought fun and life to everything.
Yes.
So it just kind of germinated in my mind that I would bring someone, and people did escape from those reservations in the Southwest, bring someone through there that she would want to nurture, who could then maybe carry her culture westward with Frank Cook. So to me, it made an exciting possibility.
Yes.
Entirely a possibility. And of course, those are the things that really inspire people, is that possibility that you can resurrect yourself from such a pathetic position to be in such a position of influence. And Frank Cook and Lily became that couple who did it, all on their own.
If you listen to the episode before this, obviously we talked about the book as a whole, and your book, as it reads, it goes from one era to the next in this great mix and a flow. And what Eric and I had talked to you initially about was, because this is an audiobook, obviously, and it would be a little bit discombobulating to kind of go from one era to another era to another area. So we did books 1, 2, and 3. Book 1, when you talk about Santa Fe and La Toules, is that the gateway to the American Southwest? Was that like the hub almost of that era?
Right, it absolutely was. When Americans were looking to the West, it was in phases, right? First, Thomas Jefferson has his people negotiate the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Now we get to go, even beyond that territory that we took from Great Britain in the French and Indian War, went over the Appalachians. Okay, now we've added New France to the map. Well, what's next? Okay, Louisiana is now in the hands of Napoleon. It's gone from Spanish to French. And how do we negotiate that kind of thing? Well, because Napoleon had a war on his hands, and he'd lost the war down in the Caribbean to Saint Louverture in Santo Domingo, which is today, the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. He had led a slave revolt. They were marooned slaves. If you escape the sugar plantations back then, you go to the mountains and you become numerous enough. They defeated the French on that island, and Napoleon said, okay, you got it. It's your island now. And then he saw what's going on in the U.S. and looks at that region. Do I want that land where they're going to take more slaves and I'm going to have this problem again? Or do I want $15 million to continue my war? So he sold the Louisiana Purchase, and they go a little further. And as soon as Americans get a glimpse a little further west, they want that too. So the movement westward continued, but as the cavalry sent men out into Lewis and Clark and others, right, to map that region, they looked at it and they went all the way to the Pacific coast, and that was British territory there in Oregon on the Columbia River. And they mapped it out, and one of the cavalry persons in 1820 mapped the Great Plains and called it the Great American Desert. Now imagine the impact that will have on the Western people, right?
Right.
That's all desert land there. Well, we don't want to go through there. Right. There won't be any fishing or hunting. We won't survive. So where are we going to go? Well, Lewis and Clark mapped out the Oregon Trail. And then there's the old Spanish Trail that goes down through Santa Fe. So you've got one route or the other. And if you go the old Spanish trail, you're going to pick up an entirely new culture that you haven't seen before. It's neither Spanish nor exactly Mexican, nor exactly Native American. It's this blend. And it's kind of an exotic lure. It became that trading post. You can't go well unless if you're going to go that route, you have to go through Santa Fe to restock and rethink and redirect yourself. So they went from Santa Fe to the old Spanish Trail, which comes up right, above Bakersfield across the Tehachapi's.
Wow.
So it's so important to surviving on the westward route, either the Oregon Trail or the Santa Fe and Old Spanish Trail.
Hearing you talk about history, and by the way, I don't know if people caught it in the first episode, but you are an author and an educator, but you are a historian. I think more importantly for women, right? What maybe catch up people if they haven't listened to the first, because history is a big part of not just book one, book two, and book three, but overall in the way that you brought Cookesville, the book, and now the audiobook to life, is to really kind of have that, as a writer, I think you have these like plots and like sublines, but your main through line really is that history of, especially with book one. I mean, you talk about the Trail of Tears, you talk about the different presidents and not just the presidents. I mean, you talk about like Congress and how the laws, it's very, I guess what I'm trying to say, Sarah, is it's very all encompassing, and it makes the story that much more richer. And I should say,
not to cut you off there, I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
add to what you're saying. The way you blended in history with a good story
yeah,
made the history, like, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
yeah,
That's kind of what it felt like. And that's one
yeah,
of the things I love about historical fiction is when you take, okay, what was this person doing during this historical event? It gives you like a boots on the ground feel to what was going on.
Very
yeah,
good. Yeah, that's a great statement, Eric. And it is true. Of course, I'm passionate about all of it, but I think it's important that people understand nothing happens in a void ever. We
yeah,
are all social animals, and we look for somebody to gel with, to connect with,
yeah,
which is what they were doing in Santa Fe. And I think my book, my story, that part of the story does an excellent job of pointing out what are you going to do when you're desperate, when you have this belief system and they have that belief system, and well, you need Doña Gertrudis Barceló because she's going to say, hey,
Yeah.
we're all humans, let's get together and have fun. And
yeah,
boy, it's such a relief. But nevertheless, the role of the church was important there, and the role of that crossroads was important. But nothing happens in a void, and so there's always the local, and it's influenced by where everybody came from in recreating their new local community, and that's what they were doing on the westward trails.
yeah,
Whether they were in the wagon trains
yeah,
or they were going around on a steamer to the Panama and going across land and then coming up the California coast. No matter how they got there, they had to bond on the journey. You
yes,
create a new community. It's kind of like when you take a tour somewhere and by the end of the tour, you've bonded with everybody on that tour. You have new
yep,
friends.
yep,
So that's what they were doing. And some of them stuck together and went westward further and
yeah,
created new communities, but they're all influenced by where they came from and the new government they create, which will connect to the federal government. So as Cookesville grew and Bakersfield grew, they had to grow in the same manner. And of
yes,
course, that came from influences from the East to the West. How did they get here and what did they bring? And some of them came all the way from Italy, and some of them came from other parts of Europe.
yeah,
Some of them were already blended races right here. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them came from Northern California southward. And it is fascinating to see what kind of community you can create with that kind of diversity. So
Absolutely.
putting them on the
Absolutely.
trail, when I was doing my graduate work, I loved the story of Westering women because they kept their diaries. Most of them that came west, at least, could read and write on some level. And they were all
Mhm.
packing guns if they were on the overland trails. They
Yeah.
were all packing their Winchesters. And it was about protecting and hunting and feeding their children and crossing the rivers and fishing along the routes. So the plains remained peaceful for more decades because that one cavalryman, Stephen Long, in 1820, labeled it as the Great American Desert. Well,
Mm.
when they found out it wasn't, then boy, homesteaders filled up the plains.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
story.
before we get into the characters, I find myself just in awe of how you put everything. I don't. This is the good thing about people who are creative and able to tell stories that flow and to make you feel something, right? When you read it, and now when you listen to it, especially when you listen to it, it's so much more different. And I like to say it's an immersive audiobook because we did
It
do
very much
sound
is, yeah.
effects and we did do the music, and it puts you in this. There's that love affair between Lily and Frank, and it brings it out. It's amazing. Uh, Tell us a little bit. How did you come up with I know you based it on the creation or the founding of Bakersfield, but how did you come up with the characters of Frank and Lily and Hopley and
Okay.
really everybody else that
I just want
that
to
plays
say
a
one
part because
thing.
it's amazing.
We talked about doing this, but in the role of Frank Cook, Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh,
Just throwing it out
Possibly.
oh,
there.
oh,
Possibly.
wow. Wow, that no, Eric, don't do that because now you have me thinking about no, don't.
No,
Yeah.
but let's get right into Frank Cook because he was such a great character because he was so, I guess the word they would use today for him is based. He was such a level-headed, at
Right.
time, normal. Like you
Yeah.
would expect any other story, he would be this horrible racist person, but he has a good heart about him,
Very good
is what
heart.
I felt most of all.
Almost innocent of a little bit, and obviously, I mean, you really did an excellent job of putting these characters in a position and almost letting the story dictate who these people are. Does that make sense? Like as life goes, they just kind of go and grow, I
They
think.
do. They do. Absolutely. Uh, of course, I'm born in Kentucky, right? Northwestern Kentucky. And if you're from southeastern Kentucky or, you know, other parts, you can be a totally different culture. It's very territorial. And
Mm,
so I put him right in the area where I grew up. He's
I
from
love that.
Kentucky, from Louisville, Kentucky.
I
I
love
just
that.
went to the Derby this year and I love Louisville.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I put him there because I know Kentuckians, and you stop and think about it. How many movie stars and singers have come from Kentucky? My hometown, Johnny Depp, he was
Yeah.
born there. The
Yeah.
Everly Brothers. Of course, there's Jimmy Dean. There's all of the Clooney's, all of them, all
Yeah.
of the Clooney's.
Yeah.
There's Patsy Cline. There's the coal miner's daughter, Loretta Lynn, and
Yeah.
it just goes on and on and on. And the Judds and Ashley Judd. I mean, you've seen them on the screen. You've heard their voices.
Yeah.
So I know the diversity of talents that come from there. So I thought I've got to bring Frank Cook from that area, and he's signed up like a young man that wants to see the world, right?
Yeah.
And what do they
Yeah.
give him? He has to patrol the reservations. He has to keep them in. He sees how they live. He sees it.
Yeah.
So he knows that they're living on the worst land that the cavalry could find or the U.S. government could find. Why do they want to escape? He knows. Does he imagine that he's going to fall in love with? No, he knows nothing about that. He's still on the trip. We got to, okay, I'm doing my duty. I've been guarding the reservations. Now I'm going off to this place called Mexico and I'm going to war. And this is all new territory. And he comes there and he doesn't know how he feels about it. And he meets Lily. Well, I'm not going to give it away to the reader.
I just got the chills. Sarah, I just got chills because knowing that how they, no, don't give it away. You got to listen to it. People, you got to listen to it. No, don't give it away.
Yeah.
But I just got chills when you said that.
Yeah, and she's young and she's beautiful, but she's young. But she's a Choctaw. And if you know the story of the 5 civilized tribes, they've all been ordered off out of the East. Andrew Jackson said it's for your own good. It's for your protection. Because we want your land and white people want your land and you've built it up. We know you've assimilated. That means that you've taken on the white man's ways. You know English, you write English, you dress like a white man, you cut your hair like a white man. You have plantations even. But we want Cherokee land because we know you found gold on it, but we want it's nice and fertile. We want that. We want Seminole land. We want Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek. We want it all. We're going to march you out there. So he's gotten the inside view, but he hasn't completely turned against it until he realizes, look at this beautiful young girl. Yeah. And I've got to go off to war now, but I know where she used to be. And it sets up a deeper understanding. And it is, they're going and they're growing and you're surviving. You know, it's a story of survival, and you cling to the people that you trust and that you love. Yeah. So it is a dramatic telling, but it could have happened because many people came from Santa Fe. Here in Bakersfield, 2 of my grandsons go to a Catholic, we're not Catholic, but they go to a Catholic school because it's a good school and it's protected and it's safe and there's, you know, security around it. And the high school they'll go to is Garces High. Father Garces helped found Bakersfield. He came across that old Spanish trail that I talk about in the book. And so he helped establish this community too. And so he brought his ways with him. And, you know, that's part of the mingling of the Chumash Indians who were local. Frank and Lily, who were, you know, who'd have thought. And it didn't occur to him, even when they're in the gold fields, what it might mean, and I'm not going to give that away, to be married to a Choctaw woman. Yeah. And begin a family. So it all could have happened. You know, I followed the route that really did happen because it really did happen. And so Cookesville is established in a similar fashion. Yeah. And of course, the roots of that combination of people and the vigilante justice it took to establish California communities. And that's what it took. It did take that back then. Before you have to establish some kind of order to keep peace.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I maybe it's lost on people, but you know, obviously being a historian, and by the way, Sarah, when I was listening to this and when I was reading it, it was this is gonna sound crazy. I was like, this is unbelievable. Because I may be Eric, don't you say anything. I may be the most gullible person on the face of the planet, but listening to it, I was caught up in, my only thought was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Yeah. And to feel, because it is historical fiction, you do look at this as it's historically accurate in, obviously it's the Wild West. And yes, there's a story, there's a lot of storylines going on, by the way, not just a beautiful love story, but to get up to that, I mean, this is, and you know, we like to call it's an epic audiobook. right? It's
Yeah.
an epic, immersive audiobook. But just book one, book two, book three, they are all epic in their own way. Does that make sense? It's like its own wrapper. Of it's a container because you get this sense of what it's really like in the old west and the emotions of your characters. And Sarah, you did a really good job. How did you decide to approach that? What is your writing style with, because I'm so interested now.
Wow. On this one, I just felt it. I sat here. It was the same with my very first book, which I'm revising right now, and it's going to be quite different from the first publication. But I really love the West, and I loved coming out to the West at 8 years old and at 12
Mhm.
years old. And then we decided to move out here, and then I can't believe Central California is the same world as Orange County, and that San Francisco is, and then we got up to the
Yeah.
Oregon border. I had no idea that this state had everything. I mean, it really does. It has
Yeah.
everything, and the way it stretches out and has so many cultures. I think that's the excitement of it. That
Yeah.
okay, I lived in Orange County. Now I live in San Francisco. It's scaring the heck out of me, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And just as I moved around, I realized that you can be excited about so many things in this state, and you get your choice.
Yeah.
So I think that I was living through that first discovery of regions, especially fortunate for us. Another Kentucky family moved, and I'd never met them in Kentucky. The man added a room onto our house in Kentucky, and I never met him. I was gone to school when he was building, and I didn't meet his kids. They moved 2 doors down from us, and now their son and daughter become our best friends.
Wow.
And on the weekends, we would take tours together, all the way to San Diego, to the San Diego Zoo. And I'm saying, look at this world. This doesn't even look like Orange County. And then we'd take a weekend trip and do all the missions. And I
Mm.
was really swept away by the missions. I had no idea. If you're growing up back in Kentucky, you don't know about the Spanish missions out
No.
here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't know about the life. So later on in my book, when I'm describing that wealthy ranch house out there that Helen's family
Mm-hmm.
owns, I'm describing my first images of Spanish missions and the tiles and the ochre and
Mm-hmm.
um, the colors of California mission
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So I think that I was just walking through it all my life, and then realizing that Bakersfield has elements of all of it. In Central California, we have the agriculture, we have the oil, we have a lot of wealth, we have the palm trees will grow here, and
Mm-hmm.
yet we've got redwoods. you
Mm-hmm.
know, a little bit of everything. And I think it's just my love of the cultures that came together in California, and my need to tell this town's stories.
Yeah.
I I was influenced by James A. Michener a lot.
Oh.
His are all sweeping sagas.
Yeah.
Caravans, if you haven't read Caravans, it will tell you the story of Afghanistan after World War II. He lived there in the Khyber Pass. He came down and he experienced the communities and the former Nazis who escaped to Afghanistan. Everybody
Mm.
knows Hawaii, the Caribbean, Centennial. His books are sweeping sagas that carry you through many families and many stories that intertwine.
Yeah.
And I became accustomed to that kind of storytelling, along with, man, I love Agatha Christie, man, I love Francis Scott Keys, man, I love, all of the British female writers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted the mystery and the thrill added to the beauty of Spanish California.
Mm.
And so I don't know. I've read them all. John Grisham, every one of his books. when it comes to a good mystery, telling a good mystery, it's hard to beat the British, but there are some beautiful settings in the United States. So
Very.
all of my reading through all those years, I read all of Hemingway and I read all of Steinbeck, and Steinbeck tells this California story in some really graphic detail if you've read Grapes of Wrath.
Mm, man, I
Yeah,
tell you.
that's the Okie story. Right here into Bakersfield, they came right over that Spanish Trail and down here into Arvin and Lamont to pick beans during the Great Depression.
I've got
So,
I you know it's not it doesn't go over my head, but you just said something when you were writing it. It was as you were writing it, you wrote it like you were like had first discovered it, which which popped into my head. I was like, "Oh my God. That's the way it feels when you're listening to this." And I think and maybe Eric, you may have like a thought about this, but I think when you approach writing and then it gets put into a movie or an audiobook, you approach writing how you want people to see it, and then all of a sudden you talk about it. And I literally that's how it felt listening to the and putting this whole thing together, right? It's being discovered for the first time. It does it's not like, oh well, they walked through there and they did this, oh they did this. It's like, no. You did this beautiful paintbrush
Yeah.
and you put it, it's little things, I think. Little things when you put it into a painting or a movie or music or books. It's the little things that fill up, right? It makes people feel something. But then I also have one other thing, a question, or do you think that Bakersfield is like the crossroads of California, like where where you cross into Northern California and then you cross into Southern California? Because the way that you were talking about New Mexico and Santa Fe, how it being the crossroads with all these cultures and all these spices and things, and and to hearing you talk about Bakersfield just now, where you have the palm trees, you have the heat, you have the cold, you have the redwoods, you have the desert, you have the mountains. It just I was like, oh my God, I got to bring that up because it's so interesting that to hear you say that about your writing, that first of all you discovered it and you wanted to write it like it's being discovered. So I think to me, I think that's the coolest thing is when an artist comes on and they talk about, well, I wanted it to feel like this, so I just wrote it like this. And then you go, yeah. Again, I'm simple, maybe, but
no,
it's
no,
just
no,
the beautiful. It's
you're very
beautiful.
astute. That's a very astute statement about Bakersfield being a crossroads because it truly is.
Mm,
And I think that's what a lot of people have let it pass by. As I begin my book, you might remember that as the author, I'm stating it as the narrator.
yeah.
That I'm trying to escape. Every year I'm trying to escape Cookesville. It's too hot. It's too this. It's too that. And then
Yeah.
I get a new career, and then I meet a new man, and I'm
Right,
stuck
right.
again, and I can't get out of this place. I'm still trying to escape. But the truth is, while I've been waiting to live, I've been really living well.
Yeah.
I had to stop and say, God, I've had a good life. This has
Yeah.
been fun. It's been drama. It's been good. And I'm still here. Why am I here? Because other people need to know that. And not a week goes by, as I say, that I don't hear somebody say, and I sold real estate for a couple of years. And I decided no, I got to finish my master's and go teach because it's a dog eat dog world. But I
Yeah.
did find when people came up here and looked around, they'd say, this is the best kept secret in the West
Wow.
because they
Mm,
found it's spreading like mad. I can get a bunch of acres. I can build a beautiful home. Look at these neighborhoods. People don't know when you by on the freeway, you have no idea that you
yeah.
can have a good standard of living. And that was the surprising element to me. I had to stop and ask myself, what's been so bad about it? I raised 3 amazing children who've gone off to do wonderful things, and I've had a good life in the meantime. So maybe this isn't such a bad community, and I better share what it's really like. It's kind of like how the West was won. No, how the West was really won. And it was won by people who put down roots, and made something of it. And that's not easy. It's not all about killing your way westward.
Right.
Now, I was listening to a novel, and I go to the gym and I've got my headphones on and I'm listening to something recently. And there's a certain writer that I've read a lot through the years, and it's kind of like the opposite of the way I write. Okay, I'll get a real quick story in here, and I'm pretty sure somebody's going to get shot pretty soon. There's going to be this. I can almost map it out for you. And I thought to myself, why am I listening to him again? And now he's teaming up with other people to help him write his stuff. But it's short chapters and short attention span.
Yeah.
If you're going to read my book, you're going to want to live with these people, right?
Man, yeah.
You want to live with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to live with them because it's kind of a part of my life. This is, I walked through it. And yes, I think writing effectively, it is that discovery you're talking about, Larry. It is, wow, I get to relive this. I get to relive that. Maybe it's a love affair. I get to relive, I get to relive this discovery feeling. It's wonderful. How did I feel when I first saw California? The first mission, the second mission. How did I feel when I saw San Francisco for the first time? Oh my word, It's that walking through history is, it is fascinating to me still.
Yeah.
I think it makes me feel young again,
Yeah.
Maybe I think that's what it does to us. Like, I'm reliving this era. And you can't look at a town out here without knowing how it's affected by federal law and history as well.
Yeah, which is very true. And and Sarah, it's kind of funny. I have it's like a revelation. This whole thing is like a revelation. But it's funny in a way because your history about being in Bakersfield and the comings and goings of you and wanting to just kind of go different places, it almost feels the way you wrote your book feels like that. There's all these comings and goings, and people try to go but they can't. They don't get pulled back in, but they do. And that's just, it's again, it speaks to your writing and how you approach this whole book. But I do want to say, and maybe we should have started this at the top, but your book is, when you talk about love and stuff, it's pretty erotic throughout, right? It's really erotic. I think when you, okay, I'm not an avid reader. Don't say anything, Erick Kaslov.
I will not on this show. Not on this show.
But I'm not so much an avid reader, and I would assume that when you read the erotic parts of a book and you listen to it and you put music to it, I was like, oh my God, I even blushed a little bit.
Yes.
Same.
I'm sorry, but I'd like to apologize, but
don't. And now everybody's like, okay, wait. Keep the episode going. What is it called? Cookesville, USA. The wickedest.
Wildest, wickedest, wealthiest, big.
I found it. Okay, let's go. Continue on. So yes, the erotic part is pretty explicit. Which we're all adults, but wow, Sarah.
Okay, now I'm blushing, but
Yeah.
I wanted my characters to be interesting.
Oh, they are.
I wanted them to be passionate. Frank and Lily were, but the ones in the 20th century carried it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that that's part of it too, because you can't, and I think to have a well-rounded book, you have to have all the elements,
Yeah.
right? And you really cover all the elements from the Old West to the 1950s to the early 2000s, and it's absolutely amazing. You have the history of the Old West and the dramatics. Obviously we're going to be talking about book 2, but you do a really good job with the thriller crime subject, right? And then in book 3 it's absolutely, like reminiscent, and it just kind of, it just, it continue, this book, life, you really put in perspective like a full life, a full clan of people, because it starts with the founders and it continues with the offspring, right, of the founders, and then even more so down the line into the early 21st century, I guess, right?
Right.
um and the evolution of where it started to where it went to where it's ending up, and I thought it was very, very beautiful in how you
In a
did that.
way, it also reminded me of in Disney World in Florida, there's this ride called the Carousel of Progress.
Right.
And it kind of reminded me of that in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I lived in Anaheim when they built that Carousel of Progress at
Wait, they have
Disneyland.
it in Disneyland also?
Not any longer. It was
Oh,
there
okay.
though. Yeah, it was
Mm,
there by 1965, I'm going to say.
wow,
Yeah, when I was a
wow.
kid, we sat there and you see it. It doesn't get any better, and then you turn
Yeah,
and you see, oh, electricity, and you see all the wires throughout the house, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then they talk about all the new inventions, and then it goes on to the next phase and the next. It's no longer there at Disneyland
Wow.
Orange County, Orange County, California.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I loved it, I couldn't get enough of it because I thought it was so fun to watch progress through their eyes.
I'm gonna
Wow.
connect it back to your book, but here's a footnote. That is the only ride in Disney that is usually updated
Mm,
Oh,
because of the ending. They have
mm.
to always update it to what the current technology is.
That
wow.
makes
But
sense.
I
Wow.
wish they, yeah, I wish they'd left it in the Anaheim, the original park, because that was a good story. It was fun.
but the way it remind me of the book is because you're following pretty much one family, for lack of a better word, a generation of people through, this town, this one area. And
Yeah,
yeah, so those were the things that were like popping in my head while I was listening to it.
yeah,
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 right.
yeah.
Because in when we began this story in 1940, it's interesting. I begin it at about 1946 when our investigator goes to Las Vegas, and
Hmm.
it's just a small, train
That's
stop town
wild.
that
Yeah.
Yeah.
finally has started building these casinos. And the mob, as I told you the other day, the mob was in Bakersfield before it was in Las Vegas. It went from Kansas
Wow.
City to Bakersfield,
Yeah. Wow.
and from the Okies in the east to Bakersfield because of all the Italians that lived here. So he was first a G-man here, and then he's a G-man over there, and that was real, and that's all authentic. Just as
Uh,
my character Lenny sees it. I had the old maps, and I make sure that I'm following the streets and the building and everything according to the era and putting the right other people there all
ooh.
around. And of course, Lenny is real, and Bugsy
Yeah.
Siegel is real.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the same is true for the characters in. I put Lily and Frank in the Goldfields, and I thought, what's a good character? Oh, let me say Grizzly Harris. And then I
Oh,
found out there was a Grizzly Harris. I've heard of
Wow.
other
really?
Grizzlies. Yeah, there was. And there were other Grizzlies. I can't remember all the mountain men that kind of had that line or
So
that
are you saying
tag
that
name.
there's a possibility sometime next year, with the popularity of the book, we could do a walking tour with you taking people to
That
locations?
would be amazing. Wow. That would be so
Oh, wouldn't
cool.
that be funny?
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
would
and
be
by
really
the
cool.
way, I was talking about my love of old westerns on TV when I was a kid, and watching Bonanza and Little
Oh
Joe
yeah.
and Haas, the whole crew. I just loved that story. And the people, Michael Landon, he was so cute, and
Oh
so
yeah.
all of us little girls were in love. And um, the cook was Hop Sing. Do you remember Hop Sing? I don't know
Oh,
Yeah,
if you've
yeah.
wow.
watched Bonanza. Yeah, so
Wow.
I have Hop Lee
Yeah.
and
I
else with
noticed
him.
that when I read it, and I was like, is that what it is? Is it a reference to Hop Sing? But I didn't want
Yeah, it
to
was.
assume anything.
Wow.
Yeah. Hop
Wow.
Sing, Hop Lee, because I had to create a Lee's restaurant here in town. And there's an avenue called Ming Avenue, and there are other parts of town where there's a Ming Benevolent Association. So there's Italian Heritage Dante Association. So there are strong heritage here that they keep their language, they keep their culture and their
That's
food. And
awesome.
so I brought them here.
That's amazing.
In
I
in my
love
book,
that.
I brought them here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I very much realize that that we've got to start kind of wrapping up because um we could go on forever. And I wouldn't mind it, but I want people to go discover your book. I want people to listen to this and go, "Whoa, I got to go see what this is about." Um, and I should say, because I talked to you not too long ago when this came out, I love Kevin Costner. I love Dances with Wolves. I love Yellowstone, Waterworld. I still like Waterworld, but
I could
Horizon.
never watch Field of Dreams again, even though it was one of my favorite movies of his.
It was amazing. I mean, the way he is as a filmmaker, I love him as an actor, but a filmmaker, he loves to take the time. He loves to build
Yeah.
these epic movies, right? Um,
Mhm.
and I had mentioned this when we were talking, Sarah. I was like, oh my God, I watched Horizon, the first chapter, right? Um,
The
and
only
I was like,
chapter.
well, yeah, but but when it, and obviously people look at it and go, "Oh, it's too this, it's too long, it's too much, it's too drawn out." But when you really look at it as a whole and what he's done, he's really set up for what he hopes he could put out 2 and 3, right? But it watching it, I was like, "Oh my God, there's that." And I was pinpointing like the coolies, right? The Chinese coolies they were in Horizon. They were part of these little communities. And I was so enthralled and tickled. And I was like, oh my God, Sarah, I just watched Kevin Costner in Horizon. It's amazing because the coolies were in there and your book just really feels just like that. And I don't know if Kevin Costner read your book before he made Horizon, but it felt like it. So so it's when you watch stuff and when you go and you listen to this podcast about the history that you brought to a fictionalized storyline, but mixed with the history, it gets lost in a good way, and you really do get like caught up in Frank and Lily and Hop Lee and their journey to get to where they're going. And your sense of history is absolutely, it pulls you in, and it grabs you, and it makes you want to just continue on, because whenever I stopped for the day editing it, they were in my mind. It
Right,
never
right.
left. And I
That's
think,
that's yeah, that's what I wanted. And
yes.
and I will have to say, I to me, there's nothing worse than reading through a book and just keep wondering, how does this person look? Wait a minute,
Right.
I didn't get a good description of this person. And mine, I think the word that I hear often is deliberate. And that's, I
Mm,
took it slow enough so that you are actually feeling how Lenny walks down the street, but you're
right,
also actually
right.
feeling exactly like Stella feels. And you
Boy,
know what she looks like, and you know what he looks like, and you know how they slowly come together, the tension and the attraction. And
yeah.
I want it, don't rush into anything. I want you to feel it all the way. I want you to feel it in the
Oh,
next page, in the next page, in the next page, so that
oh
you
yeah.
know this should never leave you. This, and that's what I feel is missing. Well, who likes dry history, right?
Yeah.
When I was
Hmm.
growing up,
Yeah.
I memorized the presidents, I memorized the Gettysburg Address, I memorized military history and the wars and all. I didn't know the passion and the challenges and the love that went into every choice that people make
Mm,
as they build a new region. And this book is all about continuing to build a town and a quality of life. And, so don't rush through who these people are. I think you can feel it when he finally realizes that he's also fallen in love with Helen. She's absolutely
yes.
smashing when he takes her to Alfredo's on that night, and everybody's attracted to her. And you feel like, oh my God, she's beautiful and statuesque,
Yeah.
and you know. So that's important to me. Don't rush through who a person is.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just obliterating history, right?
Exactly. You gotta swim in it for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a
Exactly.
good way to put it.
And actually, this is probably excuse me, a good way to really wrap up because if you liked what we're talking about in this episode, and especially the erotica, oh,
Trust him.
oh, you're gonna love book two of our podcast. Actually, episode three, book two about book two, the 1940s. Um,
And 50s,
Lenny,
yeah.
yeah, 40s and 50s. Lenny, Stella, they're red hot. I
They
mean,
are.
red hot
Yeah.
relationship. I'm not fibbing with that at all. Um, you will be. Well, we'll just see in the next one because I know now everybody's like, all right, hurry up and
Right.
end
I
so we
gotta
can get
wait.
to
I
the
gotta
next one.
wait.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But if you're looking for SC Burns on Amazon, it is SC Burns. If you type in Sarah Burns, you won't find it because it's under her pen name, SC Burns, and it's Cookesville, USA, the wildest, wickedest, wealthiest, big small town in the West. And boy, oh boy, you just found out why. Now, go on to the next episode and you'll really learn how Cooksville was founded and actually not founded but lived in. Quite amazing. So thank you, Sarah, very much. Actually, Sarah or Eric, do you guys want to leave anybody like for the next episode? And I know we talked a little bit, Sarah, about Lenny and Stella, with Lenny being a very real person that you actually knew and talked to. But do you want any? Do you want to grease up the wheel just a little bit, and then that'll be it.
Okay. Well, let's just say that Lenny has fun finding his way through Las Vegas. There's a
Let's
little
say that
chick
again.
called Patty Cakes
Yeah,
who helps him get around, and of course she she's just perfect for his transition because
yeah,
they're both having fun and they're both ambitious. They're not committed to one another. But as he squires her around town to events that Bugsy Siegel invites him to, he really was there. The Lenny
yeah.
that I knew was really there, really doing those things and rubbing shoulders with, you
The
know,
mob.
Hollywood and the mob as the Flamingo Hotel opened. And that Del Webb was supervising that project. I hadn't mind, he could have been there, and then I looked it up, and by Lordy. He was the project manager for the flamenco when Bugsy Siegel took over the project. So it's amazing, a writer's instinct, I guess, that something could happen. And just like Grizzly Harris, I didn't know there was a Grizzly Harris.
I love it.
It's in my book, and Del Webb really was there supervising. And so there's so much reality in the midst of all this drama.
Yes.
A lot of drama.
Yes.
And great sex. I want to say it's not an X-rated book. It's not an X-rated book. But when it comes to love making, it should be artistic. It should be artful and passionate. Don't rush it. Love it.
I think that'll do it. Eric, you want to take us out?
Well, everybody.
Sorry.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for checking us out this week, and we can't wait to hear from you again next week.
Thanks. It's been fun.